Hi, welcome to the Short-Term Rental University podcast. I'm Erica Bossi, and I am joined with the very talented and brilliant and very handsome Richard Fertig. Hi,
You're
honey.
too kind, but thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us.
Yeah.
For those of you that are listening to this, we happen to be in the studio, so we're actually on YouTube with the camera, so you can see the beautiful Ms. Bossi.
We're twinning today.
We are, and
In true quarantine style, we've got sweatshirts on and twinning.
you know, anything we can do to have a little bit of fun during
Right.
this quite challenging period. And you know, you're the hostess of this entire Short-Term Rental University podcast, and on behalf of myself and the audience, we thank you. But there's been so much to cover since our last podcast that I'd really love to find out where you want to start. Like, how far back do we go back, or do we just start like right here, right now?
You know, let's keep it present. Let's
Okay.
keep it present. So we're here together in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. With the Diggies and
The dogs. Yeah.
in April, and it's it's been quite a week, month, day.
Quarter, year.
Yeah, it really has. How you
I-
holding up?
You know, I would say the following. I have days where I'm filled with enthusiasm, excitement, optimism. And then I think the gift that I'm receiving from this quarantine and isolation and being with you and the dogs and separate from the world and reality is the opportunity to reflect on the things that I want to do better, the things that I'm grateful for, the opportunities or the direction. You know, I said it earlier, we went on Facebook Live, and I said this to you yesterday, but I'm a big planner and a believer of designing your life and figuring out what it is that you want to do. And I think the big gift that the isolation has given me is the opportunity and the time to just revisit that, right? Like there's been this massive exogenous shock.
Right.
And so we now know more about the world and ourselves and others than we did before. And to just follow on the same path without pause or reflection or being contemplative seems like a missed opportunity. And so yesterday, as challenging as it was, I was really thinking about my future, our business future, Short-Term Rental University future, and just making sure that the path that I was on before this massive exogenous event
Right.
remains the path I want to be on, or do I want to take a step to the left or a step to the right or turn around? You know, maybe I've seen something now that I didn't know could happen, and I want to change. And in our particular case, I would say that it really came down to how much risk, energy, effort we want to put forward on a go-forward basis, knowing that at any point in time, something could now come and just take us out overnight, right? Like there wasn't a lot of time to prepare. If you were a small business owner, a restaurant owner, and the pandemic hit, like whatever you had in the bank, whatever your employees were, whoever you had hired, like that was frozen in time, and that's who you went to war with, right?
Right.
And so I just wanted to reevaluate, you know, where we are. We're quite fortunate, not to say that we were spared from loss or pain or suffering from this pandemic, but, you know, knowing how fragile it is and how at a moment's notice we could almost turn into a government-controlled state, or our civil liberties and freedom be taken away, or our businesses stopped, or too much leverage.
Right.
So I just wanted to reflect on that, and we contemplated semi-retiring or even retiring or pulling back a little bit on some of the investments that we have going forward. And I don't want to suggest to anybody listening that decisions are made at a point in time in 1 minute. This is just a data point that while I'm well aware of risk and I manage my life, our life, using risk versus reward,
Right.
there was a risk that I had never seen before that was now introduced into the mix.
Right.
And we just had to analyze it.
Right.
But I'd love to hear from your perspective and share with everybody as openly and transparently, like, what's it like to be on that other end with Richard, who's generally upbeat, optimistic, excited, going through that introspective, pensive process?
Well, it was a really challenging day. It was a really challenging day. I think it's a really challenging time. Not I think, it is. It's just a challenging time. And it is really interesting. I don't know if it's just lack of life experience, if it's just, choices that I've made, in the past and now currently, people that in the past I've shared my life with and now who I, choose to share my life with now. But this is new for me. This is new for me. I remember 9/11. I remember, where I was. I remember what I was doing and who I was, with. I remember who I was, I was sitting next to a girlfriend on the couch, watching the television, early in the morning. And I remember, but I was on the West Coast. I didn't have, my entire family's on the West Coast. While I wasn't immune to it, while I was affected by it, and while there was an awareness, it was very different. It was very different. And so I am just, I am very consciously trying to engage every day with as much grace and faith and humanity and love and connection, and more gratitude than I can even possibly express. But with that, it's still a lot. And so, it was a very different type of conversation, or in conversations that we had, yesterday, because it was not just being aware and paying respect to like where we are right now and wanting to make the best decisions for us, for our families, for the girls moving forward, but with the anticipation that 10 years from now, how we know there's going to be something, what we don't know what that something is.
Right.
And how do we prepare for that? Because with as blessed as we are, we're still affected, and I don't know how one prepares for this.
Yeah, I think I'll share with everybody a little bit more about the conversations that we had yesterday, and I also think it's a really very different shock to the system, the 9/11 terrorism versus the pandemic. But what I said earlier about reflecting and including that knowledge in your sample as you analyze and design and plan. For example, there were many people who lived in New York City during 9/11, as I did, who were so distraught and so emotional and so fearful. And by the way, that's perfectly rational and sane. I'm not
Right.
minimizing that.
Right.
But they literally changed their lives. Pulled kids out of private school of New York City, quit jobs, decided to move to rural Vermont and lead a different life where they prioritized things other than perhaps career and job. Maybe it was
Right.
family or community. And that was a very personal decision, and decisions that many people, many families made. The vast majority of people stayed in New York and made a different decision. But it was in that vein that I spent some time yesterday initially thinking about it. And although Erica wanted to be here and now, we actually started this whole coronavirus pandemic. We were in Jackson Hole. We flew to Palm Springs, California to look at some real estate for a 1031 exchange. On our way to heli skiing for my 50th birthday. Then from there we went to West Palm Beach or Costa Rica. No, West Palm Beach, looking at another deal that I was looking at. And then from there, we went down to Nosara, Costa Rica, where we have the Living Hotel. And as this thing got bigger and more serious and more worldwide and global and lockdowns and so on, we found ourselves in Nosara, and we were in Costa Rica, and we were really comfortable with that and really safe. Nobody was panicked. There was no food shortage. There was toilet paper for days. I mean, there was just like all of the things that we kept seeing in social media. We were sort of outside of that, and we were together, which was lovely, and we were walking on the beach, and we were swimming every day. And while the world was in a very challenging place, and our investments and our decisions, and we were in flux, and we were in crisis mode, it was really nice that we could put the phone down and walk on a beach and go in the ocean, and it was just an incredible quality of life, so much so that we actually made the active decision to stay in Costa Rica. We said, you know, we would like to stay down here. We don't need to go back to the States where everybody's panicked and there's shortages and there's hoarding and like fear. It just doesn't benefit us. We know this will pass, so let's ride out the storm in this safe harbor. And that was all wonderful until Trump closed down the borders, at which point we reevaluated and said, well, the border closure is indefinite. That's the language that they kept broadcasting, I think, in essence, to effectively scare Americans to return to America. And it worked. We got scared and we were like, well, I don't know that I can stay down here. If it's 30 days, great. 60 days, great. 6 months, 6 years, I don't know. You know, like we might need to come back into the country. And so we came back into the country. And we're here in Jackson Hole, which is a wonderful place to be. It's mud season, which means I can't ski, and we go on hikes, and we're thinking about getting Erica a bike, and we might go cycling. But the point is, very safe, very protected, wonderful community, no panic, no hoarding. Literally everything we could ever want is here. And so we've got a great apartment, and we're with the condo, we're with the dogs, and it's a wonderful place. But in that sort of like post 9/11, when people decided to change their lives and move to rural Vermont, for instance, it was that sort of mindset that I was in where, you know, when 9/11 happened, I was, 20 years younger, right? 18 years younger. That's a very different mindset as far as like reboot, restart, rebuild, start all over. Like if I lost all my business in 1998, I could rebuild. I was a young man. And not that I'm old now, but I'm at a different point in my life and in my cycle. And the concept of like rebooting today doesn't seem something like I'm drawn towards. And I can't even imagine 10 years from now when I'm 60 or 20 years from now when I'm 70. And so we're using that concept to retool our business and our lifestyle and our outlook such that it can never be taken away 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And so we're making some changes, but there was a concept and we discussed it, and we might do portions of it or the whole thing, but there was a discussion about moving down to Costa Rica for 12 months and just going down there and living down there. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Costa Rican, so you know it's got a lot of personal meaning to me. It's absolutely glorious.
For those of you that don't know, I am not.
You are not. But that was, you know, I want to share with people when I say that we now have new data points and can reflect, and I'm at a different age, and I've got more responsibility and more businesses and more employees and people I'm responsible for. You know, I'm not that young 20-something eager to like, you know, just go out and hustle all day long. Not that I mind it or I'm scared of it, but I'm perhaps a little bit more mature and more intellectual and more knowledgeable, and it'd be silly to just ignore it.
Right. Well, I mean, I think what it really comes down to is that, you know, nothing's a given. We're not taking anything for granted. We don't want to go through this journey, this period of time, this space passively. We want to be present in it, and we want to choose each and every direction, and we want to do that together, but we want to do it thoughtfully and, out of respect for the fact that, again, incredibly blessed, incredibly fortunate that we have different levers to pull, different options, different choices. We're not, it's not one way or no way. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I think it's thoughtful. I think it's respectful. I think it's really, really healthy. I think it's really healthy that we're consciously, very communicatively, very honestly touching, base, with each other and making sure that we continue to be in alignment, that we see the next steps similarly.
Yeah, no, I think
together. And
I think the words that I used earlier were intentional, and you said respect. I think it's really important to view this pandemic and this crisis as a gift. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people worldwide that have lost their lives or that are suffering. There's hundreds of thousands or millions of ER and medical doctors and people that are working all hours and risking their lives and so on and so forth. And a shout out to my man, Andy Chu, who's a short-term rental university member, and he's a frontline traveling nurse, and he's doing it nonstop. So thank you, Andy, and to all of you like Andy for risking your lives to save others. And so you use the word respect, and I'll use the word we've been given a gift, because by and large we've been spared, even though we have financial loss and adversity and deals are suffering, and there's minimal stuff relative to human life. But consequently, since we've been spared the sickness and so on, we have to view this time in a positive way as a gift. And it's incumbent on each of us to make something great out of it. And I don't care if it's you start, drawing or painting again, or you take up poetry, or you start reading, or you record a podcast, or you think about the concepts that we talked about earlier and change your life in a direction. But this is not a timeout where you just binge watch Netflix, get through it, you took a nice restful opportunity, and you keep moving on unaffected. We owe it to one another and to humanity to question and evolve from it.
Yes, I completely agree. I want to be active. I want to be an active participant in this process.
And what I've said before, it's at points of inflection, points of crisis, points of discomfort, points of fear, points where your back is up against the wall, that the decisions that you make and the actions that you take change profoundly the course of your life. So in 2008, when I was running a $4 billion hedge fund, I actually lost my job the first trading day, January 5th of 2009, not because of anything I did, but because the market, the world just necessitated even more loss, even more jobs destroyed, even more families, hurt. And so the way that I behaved through that period set me up to be sitting up here in the loft on the podcast with you together in isolation. If I had behaved in a different way or asked different questions or just ignored all of that and continued on the linear path that I must be a hedge fund manager, I must resume to exact same place that I was before, I don't know that I would have succeeded. That market has never really come back. But I would be a different person in a different relationship with a different mindset, with perhaps no YouTube audience or podcast or anything like that, right? So use me as an example. It's during these points of inflection and pain and crisis and suffering and loss and so on that the decisions that you make, as small as they may seem now, have a material and profound effect when compounded over the next 3,650 days. Over the next decade, what you're doing right now will impact where you are 10 years from now. So make it count. Think about where you are today, where you want to be 10 years from now, and what you need to change, include, get rid of, add, learn, unlearn, relationship to move past, relationship to enter into. But do something, take action now, so that 10 years from now you look back and you're like, damn, that funny looking dude with the Cornell sweatshirt and the podcast stuff up in the loft with the beautiful blonde, I'm glad I did that little thing, because now look.
Right. Right. No, I totally and completely agree. And it's tough. I mean, we go back and forth, right? I mean, we're not callous at all to what so many people are struggling with and going through. We hear you. Our hearts go out to you. I'm so sorry for any moment of pain, any moment of fear, any moment of uncertainty. I know there are plenty of people hurting. It's really interesting the way that we've kind of had to very consciously structure our day and how different we are. Believe it or not, we're very different. Our problem solving is very different. You know, I will very much compliment you and your business mind and your business sense and the way that you kind of tackle and the different ways that you navigate a problem and come up with solutions. And I think it's, one of the things that make us a really great team. And I can't imagine, I mean, there's nobody else I'd rather be in quarantined with.
Well, let me just say this. I appreciate all of your compliments, but I think you often short sell yourself. The emotional intelligence you have, the heart, the perspective, the things that are really important aren't the quantitative assessments and the way that my mind works. It's really the foundational, fundamental humanity, which I absolutely love about you, and hopefully you can help others along that path. But I think it's really important for me to realize, I discuss all of these matters in a sort of removed, unbiased way. It's intellectually stimulating to me. I don't love the pain and suffering. I don't love the loss. I don't love people. I don't want to minimize any of that. But like the concept of figuring this out and making moves in advance, and
fire.
It's like
I'm just fire.
Yeah,
I've never seen this version of you.
It's like what I've built for, right? So like the 2008 crisis where I lost my job, it was like that too. I was sitting there, commander in charge of the ship, and I'm going down with the ship, and I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that we're not going down. And so like, it's just bombarded with facts. And so the point that I was making is just not only do we deal with it differently, but because she's so sensitive, the things that I really fear, I like to talk about, and then I see the parameters. Like, here's the worst case scenario, and here's 7 million other case scenarios, and here's the best case scenario. And I can't just spend all my time in like the best case scenario, because I need to see the bounds. I need to see the extremes. I need to understand the pain, the loss, the suffering, the total wipeout, like the total devastation of like humanity, and then like humanity is great. But I need to see that whole spectrum. And what I've realized in quarantine with you is that you obviously don't think that way, as you said earlier, but like even hearing me talk about these scenarios that may not happen, while I find them intellectually stimulating and helpful, like they're scary to you.
Yes.
And so I want to share with the audience that if you're in a relationship or just with your kids or whatever, if you're more like me, you might be able to speak unemotionally, removed, unattached to these outcomes, and also put like very little credibility into them, but need to discuss them.
Right.
But just be mindful that maybe your kids are fearful, or your sister or somebody else who's present who thinks in a different way and behaves differently than you might be adversely affected. And that wasn't my intention or desire. To me, it's kind of like, this is the worst case scenario, this is the best case scenario, this is where I think we're going to be. And she's still stuck on like, oh my gosh, what about the worst case scenario? And I'm like, oh no, we don't need to talk about it. We just need to highlight it and we can move on. And she's like, but, and I'm like, no, we're not living there. We can move on.
Right. I think again, it's an ongoing, journey, and we'll continue to, talk and navigate through this together. And, like I said, I'm incredibly grateful to be going through it with you. So
likewise, I couldn't imagine going it with anybody else. I do very much miss my kids. I wish their safety and health and happiness. They're currently in New York City being very well cared for by their mother and their stepfather, both who are medical professionals and surgeons, and so they're in great places. That said, as a father, New York City, the epicenter of where this is, is not exactly where I want my most precious, like, in addition to you, like the only things in life that I really care about.
Right.
And now, once again, it's the podcast. I'm getting emotional. But I will say the following, and then I think maybe we could move on to some of the news and some of the questions.
Yeah.
Having lived through a lot of adversity and a lot of similar type situations and other flus and other epidemics and other really scary times with human loss and tragedy and financial loss and so on, I just want to reassure people and hopefully serve as a guide or a show of strength. I just want to confirm that what you're feeling is natural and it's okay. But I'm going to ask you to breathe. I'm going to ask you to pause. I'm going to ask you to think about the Spanish flu of 1917, where they didn't have social media, they didn't have the medical science, they couldn't develop a vaccine, they couldn't even communicate. Or we just talked about on the YouTube video that we filmed right before this, the Asian flu of 1957 that wiped out millions of lives. You know, these things happen, and as awful as it is, it's a natural disaster, it's the way of life, and it gives life a new meaning and new opportunity, and we will get through this and we will survive, and it has the opportunity to bring us closer together. And it's a time, it's a gift, this isolation, this quarantine. Think about what it is that you want to do, how you want to grow, who you want to communicate with, what friendships you want to strengthen, what relationships you want to develop, what skills. I mean, it's a really magnificent gift, and we honor and respect people that have lost jobs, lives, friends, family through it by growing and coming out and doing something great with it. And if we all do that, the world will be a better place, and I'm highly confident that that's the outcome. I just can't tell you when. If I could, I'd snap my fingers, it'd be tomorrow. Right. And if it wasn't tomorrow, it'd be next week. And if it wasn't next week, it'd be next month. I personally think by summer of 2020, while our lives will be permanently affected and our behavior will be changed and travel will be slower and people won't get on cruise ships and we'll wash our hands more and we'll sanitize and social distancing will be a little bit more prevalent than it was before.
Right.
Life will resume back to where we were, and those that took this opportunity to grow and develop will be in an advantageous position relative to those that just hung out and did like TikTok videos and watched Netflix.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with relaxing and taking a pause and giving yourself the grace to like unwind. Like that's really important too. But it can't be one or the other. You can't be super stressed and growing through the whole period, or just in totally relaxed and pretending like nothing's happening and just come out the other side, right? Like we have to learn and grow from it.
Right. One of my most favorite quotes that I've read during this time was, we're all so anxious to get back to our regular schedules. Take this time to decide what is worth getting back to. And, what are you so anxious to get back to? And I love that. That spoke to me. I'm really, really trying to do that.
So share with us. As you've been reflective about this, what are the things that you're anxious to get back to, or excited is probably a better word, and what are the things that are maybe less exciting?
I think I'm really excited, really excited for the freedom to choose. Choose, whether or not I want to eat dinner in, whether or not I want to go to a movie, whether or not I want to go to, go for a hike or go to the gym, whether or not, I want to be able to hug people. I want to be able to shake people's hands. I want to be able to I want the choice to go and see my dad And right now, if I wanted to, I can't, because he's within kind of the age group that really needs to be distanced, from everyone. And so I took my family's health for granted. I took, just, spending time with them when it was convenient. I think that I will, I think that there's a lot of people that are either lonely by themselves, going through this process by themselves, in quarantine by themselves, relationships transitioning, and I want to take better care of this relationship. I want to take better care of the relationship that, I have with your girls, with my family, with my friends. I want to be more active in my life and less passive. I want to take better care of myself. I think that I was very lackadaisical for the most part. As far as really kind of defining and celebrating and participating in my purpose. And I'm really excited to explore that and to grow into that, and to just, I want to start showing up every day. And I don't want to take my health for granted. I'm not going to allow you to take your health for granted. And I think, as well, I kind of, quite honestly, kicked back, put my feet up, and rode this amazing and beautiful and this ride that has become my life, and haven't really been just invested in it. And I think as we communicate more and shape it more, and talk about it more, and we're actively making more and more decisions, I become more and more excited about. I'm so excited about the OBX. I'm so excited about the Living Hotel. Going down to Living Hotel, being there, meeting the team, forming those relationships. I now don't feel like I'm just kind of along for the ride. I don't want to just be along for the ride. I want to make the ride better.
Well, the funny thing is, when Erica and I started dating a little over a year ago, she really didn't know why she was coming to the architects meeting for the OBX, and she really didn't understand. And right. She was like, "What am I doing here?" And I had the presence of mind that I wanted her to be a part of all of this, and I wanted her to grow, and I wanted her to feel a part of it, and so on. And we were just reflecting a couple of days ago that thank goodness you came to every single meeting, and thank goodness you were present on all the calls, and because now you are a critically important part of the team, and you do know what's going on, and you're an invaluable resource. But at first, you had no idea that you belonged, and it was a little bit of a stretch for me to say, you should come. But in a short year, you've grown so much, right? And I do just want to share with the audience, we haven't really been posting it on social media, and we haven't been posting it on YouTube, and it's out of respect for those that are going through more difficult times, and we don't want to appear tone deaf, but we're really fortunate and grateful that the people that we've partnered with and teamed with down in the Outer Banks continue to do construction through all this adversity. The entire county has been shut down. Construction is an essential service, so we are gainfully employing people that are showing up for work every single day and providing food and meals for their family and their loved ones and their sick ones. And I have no idea when the entire county will reopen. I have no idea when the coronavirus pandemic will clear and when we can move around and so on. We're very grateful that the vast majority of people's coming to the Outer Banks drive, and so like that takes that will people get on an airplane risk off the table. And we are proceeding full steam ahead as if this didn't occur, respectful of what has occurred, respectful for the people that have lost so much during this period of time, and we don't want to appear tone deaf or showboating or anything like that. But if you've listened to the podcast for this many minutes, I think you understand that our hearts are in the right spot, and that we're sharing with you that we are investing, committing capital, growing the area, continuing to grow the community, continuing to grow ourselves as if we were unaffected, and we plan to open on time and on budget, all things, being equal, this summer. And so we're just full steam ahead. I'm super excited about it, and I can't wait to share with you guys some of these photos that we're receiving in real time. Super cool, unbelievable, absolutely gorgeous, spectacular. And Erica and I will be heading down to the Outer Banks as soon as even though I'm a homeowner, I'm a non-resident homeowner, there's these bridges that block access to the Outer Banks, and we just can't cross them. And we're not going to do anything that jeopardizes people's lives or try and sneak in or anything like that. So we're going to be courteous and respectful and safe and sound. But as soon as those bridges open for non-resident homeowners,
we're there.
Erica, myself, the dogs, we're going to tow cars. We're going to have, I got a pickup truck. We're driving across the country. I'm super excited to get on with that. And the best is yet to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So how about you? I mean, what?
I think for me, I've really spent a lot of time, as we talked about a little bit earlier, really thinking about what it is that I want to accomplish in the next 10 years and in the next 50. I just turned 50, and I think I'll live to 100, so I have 50 years. And what has really become very clear to me is that I care so much more about relationships and happiness and health and experiences and adventure and travel and doing things, feeling alive, right? Like literally feeling alive. And I care much less about things like significance or ego or bragging rights, or no disrespect to the YouTube channel or the podcast, but I'm not motivated whether I have 35,000 viewers or followers or 50,000. That's not my goal. That doesn't light me up in any way. If I can help those extra 15,000 people, yeah, that excites me. But it's not about me. It's more about helping others. And so to that end, I think what I've realized is a lot of the material wealth, the consumerism, the purchasing of this trophy property or that trophy property or this car or this, I wasn't really all about that in the first place, and it just really cemented in my mind right now. I have more than I need in every capacity. I have more love than I need. I have more health than I need. I have more belongings than I need. I have more resources than I need. And this quest for more, to me, it's just sort of enough. Let's figure out how we use what we have, the resources, the everything, to optimize our why and get closer to those love, relationships, experiences, and less about accumulation and more money in the wealth. That's all ego driven, and frankly, I think it's kind of small.
Well, it was really interesting. Part of the exercise that we did yesterday, and trying to determine and really kind of redefine, our why was, looking at the past year. What are the 5 most memorable, significant moments? And
that was a really great exercise. So we had gone through this whole day of dialogue. It was a hard day on both of us emotionally. And Erica came up with this great question. Go ahead.
Yeah, just what were the 5 most memorable moments, most significant moments that you had in the past year? And they were all moments that had to do with experiences, either moments that he and I shared, or moments that he shared with his girls, or that the 5 of us shared. And not one of them was, when I bought this car, when I did, when I won this award, when I, got that check in the mail. It was all just these really beautiful, experiences, which supports our philosophy in that is what we want to help create for others. And that's what we want to continue to create and develop, not only, with each other, but for our families and with our families. And so it was just a really great drill down.
Yeah, and I don't mean to suggest that my outlook needs to be your outlook, but I think that question, like, what are the 5 most memorable, important things in the last 12 months, will help you. Like, God forbid you were on your deathbed and you were reflecting back on the last 12 months. What are the things that come to your mind? And whatever those things are, I encourage you to do more of those things for the next 12 years, because your life will be more fulfilled.
And what I hope, like my prayer for you, is that whether it be 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, if somebody were to ask you the question, what are the 5 most significant moments that you've had, that you would say, it was actually in 2020 when I lost my job due to, COVID-19. And it made me take a step back and really evaluate what it is that I want to do, when I grow up, or with the rest of my life. How do I want to spend my time? And it, forced me to pivot and go in a different direction. And so now I'm doing this, which is far more fulfilling, which lights me up, which I get to share with my partner, which, has created more wealth, for me than, my old job, where I was, going and, clocking in from 9 to 5, or, I was brave enough to go to leave, a relationship that wasn't worthy of me and of my heart. And it was really hard, and it was really scary, and it was really lonely. But because of that, because I was so brave, because I was so strong, now I'm, in this other, relationship, living this really fulfilled and loving and, life of alignment. And so, while I don't know, I guess my prayer for you is that in the moments of darkness, that on the other side is nothing but light.
Beautiful.
So,
okay.
I think, there's something. Did anything happen with Airbnb today?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
You don't say?
No, I do say. As a matter of fact, I do say.
up.
Yeah. So what I want to share before we turn to Airbnb in the news is just the final closing sentiment on.
Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
On COVID and the pandemic and the crisis that we're living through right now. These are the defining moments. The best is yet to come. We all have the opportunity to reshape, mold, configure, change, alter, include, remove, everything.
Yes.
Everything. People will change careers. People will go from being focused on money and, say, being a stockbroker to volunteering at a homeless shelter. Like, people will make massive, dramatic changes in their lives. And I'm not saying one is better than the other or more important. It's a very unique personal decision. But I do implore you to take this opportunity, this gift, to connect with yourself, connect with your loved ones, connect with your family, connect with your relationships, and figure out how you want to come out the other side, what you do, what you don't do, what you look like, what you don't look like, where you spend your money, where you spend your time, where you spend your energy. And you do not, although the world will resume, you do not have to resume the exact same path. You could take a small step to the left, you could take a huge step to the left.
Right.
Take a small step to the right or a huge step to the right. You could step forward, you could step backward. I mean, there's no prescription and it's not one size fits all. But for those of you listening, it's a major opportunity.
Yes.
And I don't want it to be lost. So
right.
With that, I think we should turn to Airbnb in the news. And Charles, if you will roll the film, I recorded on CNBC earlier today, Airbnb announced that they received $1 billion investment from 2 private equity funds. They did not disclose the valuation.
He is raising $1 billion even as the coronavirus outbreak continues to hit the travel industry particularly hard. In a press release, Airbnb says private equity firms Silver Lake and Sixth Street Partners will invest $1 billion in a combination of debt and equity to support the startup's ongoing work. Now, the company did not disclose the latest valuation, but according to 2 sources, in early March, it lowered its internal valuation to $26 billion, and that's down from the $31 billion that it last raised money at in 2017. Now, the terms of the round, they were not disclosed either, but a source familiar with the matter tells me that there is no ratchet and the terms are attractive for Airbnb, meaning that there is no terms that make sure that Airbnb has to go public at a certain time or perform a certain way. Morgan Stanley served as a financial advisor to Airbnb. And guys, this still doesn't tell us a lot about IPO plans. Of course, the company had said previously that it had planned to IPO this year, but obviously it's facing a lot of headwinds amidst the coronavirus and now just raising $1 billion. So it could put that timeline further off.
But I think this is incredibly important for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was that the news anchor who was discussing this said that the private equity firms believed that not only will Airbnb resume, they will come out the other side even stronger.
Yes.
And it's easy to say, but when you're taking $1 billion with a B, $1 billion, and putting your money where your mouth is, you better believe it. And I believe it's really important for Airbnb to show the world right now that while they may have fumbled a lot of different things and they were caught off sides and they didn't really, they were caught off guard, they didn't really handle the crisis the best that they could, that they are not broken, they are not injured, they are not going anywhere, and getting some of the smartest, brightest private equity firms to invest $1 billion in them during this crisis, during this pandemic, when nobody is traveling, really underscores their business model, their future, their market share, the dominance of home sharing in lodging, right? Like Marriott stock is down 70%, hospitality is down massively on any public listed company, down between 50 and 70%. And here a private company, a startup that was started just after the last financial crisis in 2008 is taking a private $1 billion investment. Where the public ones aren't taking anything, right? Like that's not really happening. People are buying and selling shares, but nobody's coming in and buying $1 billion worth of stock. And what I think that does is it sends a very clear message to the world and to hosts, consistent with what it is that I've been saying, which is that the best is yet to come. And while this is a painful period, and many, if not all of our Airbnbs are vacant, certainly revenues are down, certainly making mortgage payments is painful, certainly the cleaning teams and all the other people that we employ are injured, hurting, not thriving. This is a real boost to the Airbnb business, Airbnb business model, Airbnb community. To hosts like you and I, we should take comfort, we should take measures that we are okay. They aren't going to go public. I made that prediction in 2019 when the stock market was peaking. I had no idea that there would be a pandemic, but I just knew there was way too many things going right and that we should expect the unexpected. And I predicted that they wouldn't go public. Now, unfortunately, through trillions of dollars of loss and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives being lost, I'm proven correct, and I wish I wasn't. Right? Like I really wish I wasn't correct, but the message that sends to the universe that we can't go public now is very negative. And so it's a really smart thing that Airbnb did, which was to raise that private $1 billion of capital, because that's a very positive thing. That's more positive, in my opinion, than going public, right? Like anybody can really go public, assuming you meet all these thresholds and criteria, but it's not a boost where somebody says, here's $1 billion of my hard-earned investor money, you take it.
Right.
So this really is a very significant thing. I personally believe, and there's a little bit of a debate going on in our Facebook group, that they probably did it. I posted in the Facebook group that they reduced their valuation from the last raise in 2017, was I think 32 or 35 billion. They marked their own book down because of all of the loss of revenue and the pandemic and so on, down to 26 billion. If I had to guess, and I have no knowledge and the news report didn't include it, I believe that the private equity valuation was even below the 26 billion self mark, maybe down at 25 or 24, something just to get the private equity money to come in quickly, right? Just to get that positivity out into the world, that travel and startup travel and home sharing and people wanting to have live like a local and adventure and experience that doesn't go away. And that's the message that I've been saying. I'm really upbeat and excited about the future. We just counted, I think, 8 different transactions that we're in escrow for or under contract for. We've walked away from 1, so I guess we had 9. But we haven't walked away from the others, and we're sort of on a wait and see. The mortgage market is completely frozen right now, so there's a lot of financial bottlenecks and roadblocks and obstacles and hurdles that we have to overcome. There's a lot of liquidity being injected by the Fed and stimulus, and so that will work its way through the system. These bottlenecks will clear, life will resume. But this is really wonderful news, and I just wanted to share it with the audience and express to you just how positive it is.
Absolutely.
They're not being charitable. They're not taking $1 billion and saying hey, we like you, so good luck. They're putting $1 billion because they think it's the best place for them to earn a risk-adjusted return that's better than every other investment, right? Think about that for a second. Somebody with a lot of money, and you don't get a lot of money by being a dummy. Somebody with a lot of money, with really smart investors in their fund, is saying, for my money and my investors' money, this is the best place for me to invest $1 billion. And they have a wealth of opportunities. There's so many unbelievable private and public companies that are on sale, that are, no pun intended, on life support. There's a lot of places they could put their money. So to take this $1 billion and put it into Airbnb right now, when Airbnb is not operating, I think occupancy is below 10%. This isn't a bull market investment when they're at 100% occupancy and everything is going well and they think the music will never stop. This is the exact opposite. There is no music. This is as dire a situation as it could get. And some of the smartest private equity investors say, here's $1 billion. We believe in you and your future and your health and your community and your management and your team and the future opportunities. And this is the best investment we can make with our $1 billion. And so if you didn't get it, hopefully you get it now. So, good news.
Yes, absolutely.
More good news, not Airbnb related, but New York City's announced that the worst case scenario in their models for number of hospital beds and ICU and deaths and so on, it seems like the models were maybe a little too aggressive and wrong, and it seems like we might be flatlining a little bit earlier, and this is going to be a terrible week or maybe terrible 2 weeks, and there's going to be a lot of loss. But if you look for green shoots, if you look for positivity, if you look for positive announcements, there's more vaccines being developed and more antibody tests and more testing, and the different experimental drugs are starting to work. And so I don't want to get ahead of myself and say that, the worst is behind, but I am saying it's darkest before dawn. It's pretty darn dark, and we're starting to see some rays of light, and let's just keep looking for the light and point towards that and aim for it, and let's just get there.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, look for the
What's
light.
next?
So we have a question.
Okay, so here we go with one of the questions from our community, and I think it's a good one. So let's go ahead and play it.
Hi, Richard and Erica. It's Kim. I just wanted to shout out and say hi. And also, my question for the podcast is, with all the changes that are going on, me is coming from a place where I work 8 hours a day, face-to-face with people, and don't usually sit behind a computer. My job is 100% computer-based now. And I'm working from home where I don't have an office. So can you help me come up with a plan to schedule my day enforce some sort of accountability on myself, manage my time since I get real distracted at the computer screen. I don't know, planning the future. It's been a struggle to kind of come up with a schedule. So if you have any tips or advice, I'd love to hear it. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.
Great question.
Yes.
Do you want to take a crack at it?
Sure. I would love to. Well, I mean, it's so great to hear your voice, Kim. Thank you so much for calling in. It is a fantastic question, and I think you're not alone. What I would say is, I think if you can mirror as much of your regular schedule as possible, setting your alarm, getting up at the same time, especially, Monday through Friday. And, if you're somebody who is most productive, if you work out in the morning, figure out what that is, figure out what you can still do. I know, I believe that you used to go to the gym and play basketball. If you can't do that, what is something that you can do? Is there, a local gym that's renting out, different, equipment like spin bikes or jump ropes or, any number of things, because they're trying to generate revenue while people aren't, coming into the gym, or going for a run, or doing X number of push-ups, X number of sit-ups. I mean, there's so many like virtual classes that you can take, and if you want some suggestions, I'm happy to share some with you. But if that's a form of sanity, do that. Also, I think if you can really try and outline, going in, maybe even the night before, what do you want to accomplish the next day? What are the need to do's? What are the want to do's? What are the, goals, to try and take advantage and make the most of this time? I think that, that could be really helpful. That could write it down. And I think if, and again, I would suggest that you explore the question, what parts of your regular schedule, do you really value, and do you really want to keep, and do you really want to adhere to, and what are the ones that you want to switch up? Because now you can. So I don't know. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah. So let me try and add a few thoughts to that. I think it's really important, as Erica suggested, that you try and keep to your routine. So if you used to wake up at 6 in the morning and go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, or whatever that looked like, and eat at 7, keep the hard lines pretty consistent. That'll automatically introduce some stability and a foundation that you're used to working within, those parameters. So stick with those. But the main thing that I would suggest is to limit social media, limit watching the news. Don't introduce things into 100%. Your schedule that you didn't have before, and instead try to do what it is that you were doing before, only better. Right now you have, in your case, you don't have the distraction of all these people in, say, hallways or in classrooms or whatever, right? So now you can focus just on preparing for the education and then delivering the education, and spend more time preparing. You also have the opportunity, as I shared earlier in the podcast, about viewing this as a gift. So what are the things in your day-to-day schedule that you didn't have time for before that you would like to include now? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that Eric and I are doing is a 21-day guided meditation by Deepak Chopra, which has been really helpful for us because it is stressful times, and we do want to be more calm and more thoughtful and more present. And so we're turning towards meditation for 20 minutes a day as a starting point. We are also doing exercises of gratitude, which we want to include in our daily life, because we find that when you're filled with gratitude, you can't be fearful. When you're filled with gratitude, you can't be angry or resentful. So we're replacing some of this negativity, not that we have, but that we see in the news and that we see in social media, that we're consumed by. We're removing that, and we're adding something that's positive and negative. Erica's been an absolute wonderful, thoughtful person through this period, and she got spin bikes delivered. So downstairs we now have 2 spin bikes in front of the TV, and while we don't have the Peloton bike, we are using the Peloton app, and we broadcast the Peloton exercise. And so daily we've been doing 45-minute rides, and honestly, it's the single best thing that we need. You know, normally we walk around and we exercise, and I ski, and we play and frolic in the ocean and do all sorts of stuff, and to suddenly be, confined into a condo, just mentally isn't great. And so moving and getting the blood flowing and the oxygen flowing and knowing that we're taking care of ourselves and we're loving on ourselves and we're investing our time and energy in ourselves, it mentally helps tremendously.
The other thing I would also encourage, not to interrupt you, but be very, very mindful about what you're putting in your mouth. This is something that I am having to be very conscious of. I could definitely, get carried away or kind of eat my way through this period of time. Because, 5 chips turns into, sitting down, and before you know it, yummo, they're all gone. And so I think, be mindful about what you're feeding yourself in all ways. Be mindful about what you're feeding your children in all ways. Whether that's on the television, whether that's on, what podcast you're listening to, the social media. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. That's so true. And as well, just be mindful about how much, are you consuming more alcohol than you normally would? Are you staying up later than you normally would? Are you consuming more calories than you normally would? Just take care of yourself. Be just mindful. Be mindful.
I want to share 2 things. The first one is, we all have learned coping mechanisms for stress.
Yes.
And so Erica mentioned alcohol. Some of us will turn to alcohol to celebrate, but also to take the edge off. And so that's, other people will smoke a cigarette. Other people have even worse habits, and they could yell at a loved one or take it out on somebody else or blame, right? So be mindful of the fact that we are in a stressful environment and a stressed nature at a point in time. What is it that you're doing that's unhealthy, and how can you replace it with something that's healthy? And to share with people in a very specific example, Erica can be an emotional eater. When things are good, she celebrates with good food. Yes. Maybe it's dessert, I don't know, but something. And when she gets stressed, like we were discussing yesterday, how we were having these conversations and she was stressed and she turned to food again. And, I was cognizant of it. I didn't say anything because I want her to deal with the stress. But think about what it is that you do when you're stressed, and are you doing that right now? And if instead of doing it the same way, could you substitute it? Instead of smoking a cigarette, could you do 5 push-ups? Right. Instead of eating the chocolate, could you grab a carrot stick? Right? Just like these little things. But the more that you do that, the more self-aware you are, the more you start to love yourself, and the better you come out of it.
So the other thing I would say is, be forgiving. Be kind to yourself. I definitely got after it and, ate far more chocolate yesterday than I should have. Today's a new day, and so I'll just work it off. Now is not a time where I want to beat myself up. Now is not a time when I want to have, negative internal dialogue. Now is not a time when I want to be unforgiving or unkind, to myself or anyone else. And, the other thing that I would say is that, reach out and have the conversations and the connections with people that you normally claim you don't have time to. So one of the things I did this morning that I loved doing that I never make time to do is I wrote, I think, 6 cards to family members and to friends. And I it was a gift to me because I definitely got joy out of it. And I love the anticipation that they're going to go to their mailbox and they're going to have a little love note, from
I better be getting one. I'm just saying, like, if there's love notes going out and in my mailbox there's not one.
Right. But I mean, and that's what I would, and so, one thing that I can definitely attest to is that I have, I've had more conversations with my dad, my mom, my sister, people just that I choose to, that I want to, that I want to know that I love them, and that I'm thinking of them, and that my prayers are with them. And I want to do that more and less social media, less news, less. Yeah.
And conversely, for me, the news is really driving me, right? Like I'm in the zone. I need the news to know what's going on, to make decisions and to formulate theses, and like I don't get scared by it as much as I get excited and motivated.
Right.
So it's a very personal thing. But I think in closing, what I would say is this, Kim, I would keep the boundaries that you set for yourself. Rise at the same time, eat at the same time, go to bed at the same time. Think about your daily schedule and what you're doing that you don't want to do and eliminate that. Add in things that you do think add value to you. And then if it's helpful, literally create a calendar, a schedule. Like from 8 to 9, I do this. From 9 to 10, I do this. From 10 to 11, I do this. And it could be things like teach this class, read, prepare tomorrow's curriculum, whatever it is, but like create slots, set a calendar reminder on your phone so like the alarm goes off, and then just like you would switch, classrooms and classes, and we go from teaching whatever, the 6th graders to the 7th graders, or we switch from this auditorium to that auditorium, like take out the next thing. I'm done with the curriculum and now I'm focused on X. But if it's helpful, literally line it out. And I think you'll find that you could have the most productive, say 30 days in quarantine ever, right? Because you're fully in charge. You can control everything that it is that you do. There's nobody else peering over your shoulder telling you must go here, go there, do that, interrupting you.
Right. And play with it.
Yeah.
Play with it. Play with it until,
have
like you
fun
find
with it.
Absolutely.
That's the key word,
yes.
play.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, friends,
thank you so much for calling in.
It's been a nice hour together or longer, maybe 75 minutes.
It has.
And I very much appreciate your time and your attention, your efforts, your patience. And I just want to remind everybody that it's a moment in time. And we are going to blink. And while we will never forget and life will never be the same, chances are the fear and the pain that you're feeling now will vanish. Yes. Before you know it, all will be fine.
Yes.
So.
And I just want to put out there again, if there's anyone that needs somebody, it would be an honor and a privilege to be that somebody. So please reach out. I would love to keep anybody company for whatever period of time you need. But please, you're not alone. You're not alone.
Absolutely not. All right, everybody. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy, remain distant from people for the time being so that we can all come together when this is all said and done.
Yes.
And thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
The best is yet to come, everyone.
Absolutely. Take care.
So that does it for another episode of the STRU podcast. As always, all links mentioned are in the show notes below. If you're serious about short-term rental investing, be sure to check out str.university. Till next time.